Hello everyone, my name is Beckett and welcome back to the channel. And today in Division 2, we're going to be breaking down another build video for you guys today. And we dusted off the Backfire, one of my favorite SMGs, just really fun, really aggressive build, something that really makes you push or die, and those are always my favorite builds. Now let's get into that video, but before we get started, if you enjoy the content, hit that subscribe, and if you like my videos, smash that like button. Now let's hop into the playstyle. So since we are going to be building around the Backfire, if you have never used this SMG, it's a very fun gun to use. Every time a bullet lands on an enemy, we get a stack of 1% critical hit damage. Now there is a little bit of a drawback. Every time we reload, for each stack we have, we get a stacking bleed on us that does 1% of our armor per stack. So if you're at 200 stacks, we are going to be losing 200% armor. No worries, we got plenty of regen, and we are going to be pushing hard with our Memento backpack. And if you are looking for a laid back build, this is not one for you. We are going to be very aggressive with this gun. It is the only way to play around it, in my personal opinion. But let's hop into these specializations. Alright, so as for specializations, we have a couple different choices depending on what kind of content, if we're doing solo or group. Now, if you're just running solo heroics, any type of content that you plan on running, go ahead and go with the gunner specialization. We're going to get that 10% extra armor on kill. We have handling. There's a bunch of different reload perks, a lot of things that really go with the Backfire. Now, as for group content, since the scaling is a lot higher, that 10% armor on kill is not really going to help us that much, since we are going to be building into a shield build with this. We are going to want to run the technician specialization, mostly because we want to get that artificer, because that's going to help heal our shield, and that's really going to keep us in the fight for longer, because just running a tier 4 shield in heroic group content, you are going to get shredded non-stop. Now with that, we're going to actually be at a tier 5 shield with the specialization as well. We're going to have that artificer just pumping our shield every 7 seconds, just topping it off to full, and you can just keep pushing and pushing, going in, getting those tokens from a Memento backpack, as well as many other things that are going to be going on at the same time. As for our weapons, we will be using the Backfire almost 100% of the time. We won't really need to switch out unless we get in a little bit of trouble, and I'll explain that in a second. But the talent we get with the Backfire is payment in kind, dealing damage to enemies at a stack of 1% critical hit damage up to 200 stacks. So we're going to be sitting at around at least 300% critical hit damage, and that all really depends on your shade level. Now the downside is, like I explained before, is every time we reload, we're going to put a 10-second bleed on ourselves, dealing 0.5 armor damage per stack. So if we were at 200 stacks, we would be nuking our whole armor. Luckily, we're going to be building in some hazard protection in this build, so our bleed is going to be about 3 or 4 seconds, which is very manageable with the different kind of armor regen and armor on kill we have working with this. It's not going to be an issue. You may get in trouble sometimes, and that's why we have our secondary. So I will be using the mop as my secondary, and this is just like a oh shit button. I need to pop this out so I can get some armor, I can get my armor back up, and then I can switch back up to my Backfire, basically just because we get that extra 10% armor on kill. And we are going to be using the talent preservation, so every time we kill an enemy, we repair 10% of our armor over 5 seconds, and headshots are going to do an extra 10%. So ideally, if we get that headshot kill, we're going to have 20% armor back, but this is just going to keep us in the fight long enough so we can switch back and go to our Backfire and go back into our main rotation. Now as for gear, we are going to use the Memento backpack. Great backpack, one of my favorite. It's going to let us run 3 reds and 4 blues, which is going to be nice for our shield as well as for our armor, because that Backfire is going to be tearing us to shreds, as well as all the elite enemies out there. Now, as for the talent, it's just a really great talent. If you've never seen it or you're new, just every time we get a kill, there's a little token. You're going to want to pick that up. It's going to give us a passive buff that's going to last for 300 seconds or about 5 minutes, and it's going to give us 3% armor regen. It's going to give us about 20% weapon damage, and it's going to give us that skill efficiency, which is going to help us with our artificer. It's also going to help us with our shield in case it goes down, so we're only down a shield maybe 5 to 10 seconds at most. And every time we pick up a token, we're going to get something awesome. We're going to get 40% bonus armor, which is huge. We're going to get that skill efficiency, 60, which is not that much, but we're also going to be getting 15% extra weapon damage, and that's really going to start hitting hard. And when we get up to those 200 stacks and we have those bonuses running, we're going to be hitting pretty hard, between like 600 and 700k per bullet. Now, as for our other pieces, we're going to want to make sure we have 2 Seska, 2 Bellstone, and 1 Yawl. Ideally, if you have the Hollow Man, use that. That's what I am using right now, and it is very nice. It's going to add that 10% health damage, and it's going to really help you nuke down any electronics. Since we're going to be using the Technician Specialization, it's going to help with that. We're going to have the 12% from the Technician Specialization and 10%, and that's just going to destroy any doggos, as well as any red bar enemies, any enemies in general that don't have armor. It's really going to add that bang, so we can go up, we can rush them, we can get our kill tokens, and so on and so on. After that, you're just going to want to make sure you have at least 1 hazard protection roll on any of your pieces of gear, since we're going to have 20% from the Yawl and the Seska included. And make sure you just have bleed resistance in all your gear mods. Ideally, you would get 10%, but if you don't have good luck like me, I'm sitting about 8 or 9% gear mods for that bleed resist, and it puts me almost at 70%, and that's very good place for me. I feel like 3 or 4 seconds of a bleed is very manageable. The armor regen really just kicks in, and you really don't have to worry about it. As well as that, we're also going to be having the Memento, so every time we pick up a token, we're going to have that extra weapon damage, and we're going to have that 40% extra bonus armor, which is going to be huge and just make us into a walking tank. Now, as for the skills, if you are going to be running the Gunner Specialization, you're just going to want to use the Crusader Shield, and the mods we are looking for is just active regeneration and shield health. The other ones really don't matter. You're not really going to have any trouble. We don't need holster regeneration because we don't plan on putting away our shield. Now, when it comes to the other mod, it is completely up to you. It's pretty much a user preference. I went between the Banshee Pulse and the Decoy. The Decoy felt good, but you know, enemies don't always go after it, seems like. So it's just kind of depending on how you want to play it. Like I said, that's if you're going to be running solo. Now, if you decide you want to do group play, you want to hop into Legendary with this build, then you're also going to want to be using the Crusader Shield. Same mods apply, but you're going to want to make sure you are using the Artificer skill. Now, this is really good because about every 7 seconds, you're going to get a huge boost to your shield, and it's pretty much going to top off your shield and just keep you in that fight that much longer, just because the scaling of heroic and group, if you're just using a regular tier 4 shield, you are going to get shredded every time. And I just found it worked well until I got into a Chunga situation, and then they were just melting me and I was just dying instantly. So definitely make sure you're running Technician if you're in a group setting. It's really going to help your survival, and it's going to make the build just feel that much better. Now, when it comes to stats, you're just going to want to make sure you're as close as you can get to that critical hit chance cap. As you can see, I'm sitting at 55 and I feel very comfortable with that, and I just put the rest into critical hit damage, and I'm a little bit over 100, and then the Backfire is just going to kick in and do that much more damage. And you can really tell when you get over those 100 stacks, it just starts railing. And one good thing to mention about the Backfire, as soon as you get to 200 stacks, that bleed is completely gone. So if you can stay at 200 stacks as long as possible, you're not going to have to manage that bleed, and you can just nuke everything in sight. Now, when it comes to armor, I'm sitting at almost 1.4 mil. I tested around and I was able to manage about 1.2 mil, and it felt okay, but definitely having that extra armor core really kicks in and really helps. As for your hazard protection / bleed resistance, you're going to want to get your bleed resistance as close to 60 as possible. I ideally am trying to get to 70, but I have not quite hit that. As soon as I get a couple max roll mods, it's going to be a little easier, but I felt anything under 60, it was just too punishing and it just wasn't fun to play. I felt like I was just heading to cover more often than actually playing the build as I want to play it. Now let's hop into a few things that I think is really going to help you, and a lot of this really just depends on how you play, but ideally you're going to want to be playing this fairly aggressive. Now, the biggest trouble I had while playing this build is dealing with Chungas, so a good idea is just to know their weak points, use them, take advantage of them. It's really going to help you, especially if you are at low stacks with your Memento, or you're just low stacks with your Backfire. You'll notice you're not going to do that much damage, so you might have to weave around a little bit with your shield, but it shouldn't be a problem because you can get behind them fairly easy. get that weak point and just stagger them. And if you are running with someone with CC, it just makes your life so much easier. You're just able to go to town and they don't even worry about you. Now, like all builds with the Memento, there is a little bit of ramp up time, but I've noticed with the Backfire, since we're having so much critical hit chance and critical hit damage, that it really isn't that much. I would say by the 10th stack, you feel really good. And by the time you're at max stack, you almost feel like you can't die. And sometimes I just go a little too far in. I'm like, well, I gotta back off. And just always remember, if you find yourself getting low or to little to no armor, I would switch out of the Backfire, try not to reload, and just switch out to that shotgun with preservation or anything that will kind of kick in that life. Because if you hit 0 armor and that bleed is kicking in, you are automatically dead. There's no med kit that's going to heal you fast enough. And one last thing I want to mention is this is a very aggressive build. So when you're playing, you need to be moving from kill token to kill token from your Memento. That's what's going to keep you alive and keep you in the fight. So you can just keep pushing to next enemy to next enemy. And ideally, you're going to want to finish off the red enemies first. Just less enemies out there is less damage your shield is taking. And as always, just take advantage of all weak points you can. It's really going to help you in the long run, just because we are not only fighting the enemies, but we are fighting against ourselves with that bleed. So just take it as you like, but really just focus on getting those kill tokens and you're going to have a blast. Now, if you have any comments, you want to leave tips down, or you have any questions, just go ahead and leave them down below. I love hearing from you guys. And as always, keep it civil, guys. We are trying to have a nice little community. And if you're looking for other build videos, I do them about every week, and go ahead and check out my channel, as well as I do tutorials, Division 2 news, everything for those old players to the new players and everything in between. And thanks again for watching.